Hey, this is Jared here with another Mastering the Draw video from Huntin Fool. And in this particular video, we're gonna run through what we call the fall points only period. There's a number of states that have a points only application period that typically runs from July through December in some cases. Basically right now we have Wyoming, Montana, Oregon, and South Dakota are the 4 states we're going to run through. And before I get too far into this video is going to be a little bit long because there's nuances to each of these states as you would expect. So we are going to put segment markers in here. So if you want to skip to a certain state, you can easily do that in the YouTube video. And also keep in mind that, like for example, the state of Wyoming alone, the Huntin Fool magazine, we have over 30 pages of text dedicated to explaining how the state works. I'm going to keep it at a high level, but always consider becoming a Huntin Fool member so you can actually get that detailed information from our magazine, and you can actually get the eMag version for as little as 48 bucks a year. So it's a great resource if you want to get more detailed on the stuff that I'm going to cover today. Having said that, the number one question that I'm going to try to answer is whether or not you should be applying for points in any of these states, and if so, what species. So with that said, let's dive right in. Wyoming's the first one that we're going to cover. Wyoming is a preference point state, not a bonus point state. And I know that at Huntin Fool, we kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, really beat a dead horse over preference points versus bonus points. But it's super important to understand, again, preference points give you preference in the draw over applicants who have fewer points than you. Whereas bonus points just give you more names in the hat, more chances to get a low random number. So again, this is a preference draw in Wyoming, and they do offer points for all species except for mountain goat and bison. Points are $150 each for Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep and for Shiras moose. Fairly expensive point system here in the state of Wyoming. And then they're $52 each for elk, $41 for deer, and $31 for antelope. They do have a youth option where points for deer, elk, and antelope are only $10 each for youth, but there is no price break for moose and sheep in the state of Wyoming. And then of course, Wyoming always charges you a convenience fee for using your credit card too, so keep that in mind. That will be added to these prices that I'm quoting here. So let's start with Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep in the state of Wyoming. Maximum points going into the draw in 2021 was 26 points. So it's a very mature point system. There were 45 non-resident bighorn sheep ram licenses issued in 2020, of which 39 went to preference point holders, max preference point holders, and only 6 went to hunters in the random draw. And one thing that's super important to remember in Wyoming's random draw is that none of your points count, no matter how many you have for those random tags. So even if you had, say, hypothetically 15 points, if you're competing or vying for those random tags, your name goes in the hat once with everybody else who's competing for those random tags as well. So with all of that said, unless you're already pushing 20 points, you'll never catch the draw in Wyoming. And so as a general rule, we recommend not starting to do a preference point strategy for sheep in the state of Wyoming, with one caveat, and that is all of these states with these really mature point systems, we're worried that at some point in time, I shouldn't even say worried, we're actually optimistic that they'll actually kind of pull their heads out and recognize that the point system is broken and they'll have to edit it. So in that case, if they change it to be more favorable for people who don't have max points, then it may be worth building points. But again, it's a very expensive proposition to do so. Also with Wyoming, one other major negative is they only have a 2-year point purge, which means if you sit out of the draw for 2 years, on the 3rd year, they will take all your points away and revert you back to 0. So once you start building points in Wyoming, you want to stay on it. Otherwise, you're just donating money, throwing good money after bad. All right, with moose, it's very similar. Again, max points is 26. Again, preference points. In 2020, there were 61 non-resident bull moose licenses issued, of which 56 went to max point holders or upper end point holders, and only 5 went random. And again, the points do not help you in the random draw. So you may want to consider, with both sheep and moose in Wyoming, they finally made it to where you don't have to front the $150 fee and actually participate to go into the draw. So you may just want to try to play the draw. You do have to pay the tag fee up front in order to do that, which is very expensive. You have to float that on your credit card, but it may be worth going in and just competing for those random tags as opposed to trying to chase a preference draw in the case of moose, unless you're already pushing 17 points, because again, you'll never catch the draw the way that it's set up now. Another friendly reminder, Wyoming may edit this down the road, so if you want to bank points hoping that they do that, that is an option. And then finally, another friendly reminder, 2 years, they're going to purge your points. So once you're in, stay in. All right, with Wyoming elk and deer, max points going into the 2021 draw was 15. So a little less mature point draw. Most competitive tags, the hardest tags to draw in the state for both species, still require max points. And even there, most of those hunts are not guaranteed that you will draw a tag. So in other words, that point is going to continue to creep up year after year after year because we're not clearing out the top end point holders because there's not enough tags available in those most competitive draws. So points just keep kind of building up. Now, having said that, tags can be guaranteed for both species with few to no points. And as a result of that, we actually believe that Wyoming is a must build points for state for both species. If you're a deer hunter, build points in Wyoming. If you're an elk hunter, build points in Wyoming, because it's still one of the better values out there to build preference points in. And also because it is a preference draw, you can actually know when you're for sure going to be guaranteed a tag for the most part, assuming things don't move too much. And so it allows you to plan in your schedule and make sure you can hunt Wyoming with a plan. But again, 2-year point purge for these species as well. So if you sit out for more than 2 years, they're going to take your points back to 0. All right, Wyoming antelope. Wyoming is the king of speed goats. If you really want to chase antelope, you absolutely have to be building points in Wyoming, or more importantly, maybe even just trying to draw a tag every single year because there's a lot of opportunity. Having said that, max points in 2021 was 15 for antelope as well. And tags can be guaranteed for few to no points in the state of Wyoming. And part of the reason for that is because the more points that are required to draw a tag, that equates into more public land opportunity. It does not mean better trophy potential. So most places where points go up, you think that you're going to get a bigger, a better shot at a bigger animal, maybe a larger trophy potential. But in Wyoming, really the more points that it takes to draw an antelope tag is all it means is you just have more public access, more BLM, more state ground that you can roam around and go hunt a speed goat on. Again, no brainer. Wyoming is a must build points for state when it comes to antelope if you're an antelope hunter. Wyoming also will purge your points on antelope. Same thing. All species, 2-year point purge. Sit out the 3rd year, they're going to take your points to 0. All right, let's move to the state of Montana now. Montana really complicates things because it is a preference point state and a bonus point state. And we will link the video here that I did earlier on how the deer and elk draw works in Montana. I am not going to go into that here because it's way too complex and complicated to outline it in a points only video. But having said that, the big game combos are a preference point draw. And those points cost $50 each in the points only application period, which is open right now. But Montana will let you build 2 points. And on the 3rd year, if you don't go into the draw, they will purge those points. And again, we're talking about the preference points for the big game combo tags. So where possible, if you can see yourself in the future going to hunt the state of Montana, build a preference point or 2. It's very important in order to be able to guarantee yourself a tag in the draw. And again, check out our other video for a lot more detailed look at this. Having said that, Montana also has bonus points for each species in the state with the exception of bison. So it's $75 each for Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, for Shiras moose, and for mountain goat. And then they're $25 each for elk, deer, antelope, and mountain lion. And we'll dive into each of those species categories here next. When it comes to bighorn sheep, moose, and goat, max points going into the 2021 draw was 20. So again, pretty mature point system. In Montana, they do square your bonus points, so they give you a mathematical advantage. So for example, if I go in and I have 10 bonus points, they're going to square that. I'm going to get 100 chances to get that low tag number and maybe get a permit. So they do square your points in Montana, but it is still a random draw, which means there are no tags that are set aside for high point holders of any kind. You just get more names in the hat. The more points you acquire, more chances to win your permit. To be frank, draw odds stink for all three of these species, even with a lot of points, but Montana does issue more non-resident tags for these species than most other states do. So if you're real passionate about trying to draw a mountain goat, Shiras moose, or bighorn sheep tag, Montana is a good state to consider just because there are a fair number of tags available, and it's still not a super expensive state to go after and build it on a species by species basis. On the upside, unlike Wyoming that we just talked about, Montana never purges your bonus points. So, and again, I want to be super clear. They do purge your preference points for those combo tags after 2 years, but on your bonus points for each individual species, they never purge those. So it never hurts to build points, sit out for a year, 2, 10, however many, and come back in. All right, let's talk Montana elk. Max points going into the 2021 draw was 18 for elk. Again, bonus points are squared for elk in Montana as well. And it is also a random draw. There are no tags set aside for high point holders. And then it's really important in Montana to look at it from a rifle or an archery standpoint, because from a rifle standpoint, the reality is it's very tough draw odds for quality tags. And so it's hard for us here at Huntin' Fool to justify building points because the combo license application process is both complicated and expensive. Again, I don't mean to keep kicking back to that other video, but it outlines it much better than I can in this short video. So rifle can be a difficult one for us to recommend. However, if you're an archery hunter, archery elk hunter, there are some quality tags available for, very few points. And again, there's no guarantees on points, but with 2 to 3, 4, 5 points, you can have draw odds that, go north of 90% that you're going to draw a quality permit, like in the Missouri Breaks, the multi-region tag that's called the 900-20 tag, etc. So there are some really good quality opportunities. If you're an archery elk hunter, I recommend definitely building bonus points at $25 in each for elk, without a doubt. And again, that's because, in part, those points are never purged. All right, deer is a little bit different story in the state of Montana. Again, the max points are the same. It was 18 going into the 2021 draw. And those bonus points are squared, and there are no tags set aside for high point holders. But in both rifle and archery, the reality is it's very tough draw odds to acquire a quality permit as it sits right now. And again, it's in an expensive and non-intuitive application process through the combo draw, where you're basically trying to draw a license to hunt deer in the state of Montana, plus you're trying to draw a special permit to hunt deer in a special area. So for the most part, we recommend not building deer points, with one significant caveat, and that is that A, bonus points aren't purged, but B, I believe strongly, and this is bro science, honestly, but I believe strongly that Montana is going to change many of their general season deer hunts into a draw in the near future. And then all of a sudden, instead of having a limited handful of tags that are almost impossible to draw, there's probably going to be a wide range of tags in Montana that will take a small number of bonus points to acquire. And so you may, on the off chance that Montana does that, it may be worth the $25 a year to build a bonus point for deer. All right, antelope. Antelope in Montana is second only to Wyoming when it comes to opportunity. So we highly recommend that you apply for antelope in Montana as well, or build points in Montana. Again, those points are squared in the draw. There are no tags set aside for high point holders. But there are separate point structures for the archery only tags and for the any weapon tags. The archery only, the hunt code is called the 900-20 hunt code. And basically you can hunt almost all of the state with a bow that has antelope hunts open for archery hunts. But the any weapon tags also have pretty good draw odds as well, and they're two totally separate point categories. And you can build points in both categories each year. You cannot hold two of those licenses in the same year. So I can't have an archery only permit for like a buck antelope and a gun tag, but I can hold one or the other and build points for the other species at the same time. So if you just love antelope meat, you love chasing antelope, then I recommend both the archery points and the rifle points in Montana for speed goats. Yeah, again, must build points state for antelope if you're a speed goat fanatic. All right, mountain lion. I'm just going to touch on this briefly because it is worth noting that Montana does have a mountain lion point system. The biggest thing here is that there's a ton of opportunity for mountain lion hunts in the state of Montana that are over-the-counter or general lion licenses. So realistically, most people that come out to hunt a lion in Montana are not bringing your own hounds. And so the biggest thing that we would say here at Huntin' Fool is check in with an outfitter, figure out who your outfitter is going to be, check in with them, and make sure whether or not you should be applying for points or not. The majority of the state does not require them. And so for the most part, it's not really necessary, but some of the stuff in the West, Northwest in particular, requires some points to draw tags. And so check with your outfitter first on mountain lions. All right, we're gonna move into Oregon next. Oregon, again, is a preference point state, not a bonus point state. So they're going to issue the tags to the people with the most points. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. There is no point system for bighorn sheep and mountain goat in Oregon. All other species there is a point system for. 75% of all controlled hunts for deer, elk, and antelope go to applicants with the most points. So again, this is a mature point system that favors people who've been in it a long time. And you're gonna see here next why we typically recommend that you don't start building points in Oregon. You have to pay $172 non-refundable hunting license. There's a $10 option for youth, but you have to purchase that in order to build points. You can hunt Roosevelt elk and Columbian blacktail on that general hunting license, that non-resident hunting license. You have to purchase tags for them separately as well, but there is some opportunity associated with it, but the opportunity has dwindled drastically in the last 3 years. They're cutting opportunities for archery deer hunts, for archery elk hunts, etc. And so it's pretty hard for us to argue that you should be doing this. Having said that, if you do have the hunting license, it is only $8 per species to build points for deer, elk, and antelope. So it's fairly cheap once you've invested in the non-resident hunting license. All right, specifically talking about elk, the maximum points going into 2021 was 27. So we're talking almost 3 decades of elk points stacked up in front of you. As I said earlier, historically, it's been very expensive for poor draw odds for all weapon types, honestly. Now, recent changes, Oregon has had a lot of over-the-counter archery hunts that they're pulling back into limited entry draw hunts now. And we think that those are gonna be fairly easy to draw with very few points. So it may be worth keeping that on your horizon to think about building points in Oregon. For now, there's still a lot better options in our opinion. Yeah, and to that point, most of the Huntin' Fool team here does not apply in Oregon due to those limited tags in an expensive system. Positive, like Montana, Oregon never purges your points. So at least on the upside, once you start building points, you can kind of bop in and out of the game and hang on to your points over time. When it comes to deer, max points was even higher. It was 28 points going into the 2021 draw. Again, historically poor draw odds for an expensive strategy. But with deer, they did the same thing here in the last few years. They're pulling tags that were easier to acquire back into a controlled hunt system. Over time, that may develop into a decently, an achievable opportunity to pursue through a preference point draw. Honestly, here at Huntin' Fool, we'll keep a close eye on that, and we'll constantly be updating members and subscribers to that situation because it's an important one that's developing as we speak. Again, most of the Huntin' Fool team does not apply in Oregon due to limited tags in that expensive system, but your points are never purged. All right, and finally, we'll talk about antelope in Oregon. As if deer and elk weren't already depressing enough, I strongly advise, unless you're already building points and buying a hunting license in Oregon for other species, to not chase speed goats in Oregon. Very few tags, 28 was the max points in the 2021 draw. And the reality is most of us do not apply for that again, simply because the quality and opportunity does not match the financial cost to apply for those tags in Oregon. All right, and finally, we'll talk about South Dakota. South Dakota is a really unique state. It is a preference point draw again, not a bonus point draw. So you're building points to gain preference over others in the draw. And there's several species that are kind of interesting in South Dakota. We've got trophy bison, we have non-trophy bison, 3 separate categories of deer that you can build points in, and then finally antelope. So pretty good handful of species there. It's really inexpensive to build points in South Dakota. It's only $10 each species and category to build points. So again, keep in mind there's 3 of those deer categories. It could cost you $30 a year to build deer preference points in each of those 3 categories. And then your points are actually cubed in the draw, which is super interesting. I don't think we have another state that we cover that does that. So you get an extreme mathematical advantage for long-term participation in the South Dakota system. As we dive into each species, starting with trophy bison, these are free-range fair chase bison, so they're Boone and Crockett eligible. They're hunted on Custer State Park, which is 71,000 acres, again, of free-range fair chase, but you will be accompanied by a park official on the hunt. There's no additional cost for this official because, quite frankly, the cost of the bison license probably consumes the need for that. These particular hunts are rifle only. That's the only weapon choice available, and they're also only 3 days long. If you do draw the tag, it's $6,500 out of your pocket. Those fees are not paid up front. They're only paid if you're drawn, but you need to be aware of that. If you start building points there, you need to understand that it's going to be a very expensive bison tag when you do draw the tag, if you draw the tag. And it takes 2+ points at a minimum to have any mathematical chance at all for these. South Dakota is somewhere in the middle between Wyoming and Montana. When it comes to points, they'll let you sit for, basically you can sit out for 5 years before they purge your points. So you've got a 5-year wait before they take your points back to 0. Now, as it relates to non-trophy bison, these are also free range fair chase. Same exact scenario. You're hunting them on Custer State Park. You're accompanied by a park official. This one, you can choose rifle or archery, and it's only a 1-day hunt though. And the official who will accompany you on the hunt will actually basically designate the animal that you can take on that hunt. They're targeting cows to keep population down and bulls that are less than mature. Now those trophy bison bulls, they're targeting 10+-year-old bulls. So there's still plenty of opportunity to target a mid-range bull in here, but keep in mind that you're gonna be accompanied and somebody's gonna tell you what you can and can't shoot on that hunt. It's also a very expensive tag, not near as bad as the trophy, but still $3,200+ out of pocket if you draw the tag. And again, same with this one, 2+ points required in order to have a chance statistically at a draw. All right, finally, let's talk about South Dakota deer. There are 3 categories: the Black Hills, the West River, and the National Wildlife Refuges. Now, it's important to note that it's muzzleloader only on the National Wildlife Refuges. The others have multiple weapon opportunities depending on the season. There are no distinctions made by South Dakota on points between whitetail and mule deer. Deer points are deer points. It's that simple. Hypothetically, you could have up to 3 legal deer licenses a year in South Dakota because of these 3 separate systems or 3 separate categories. So that's kind of interesting and unique and makes it worth considering as a great opportunity state for deer. South Dakota is limited on access as it relates to public land. It's not like the rest of the western states that we've covered here. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your access plan dialed in before you start applying for tags, because it is critical. There is ample public land. There's ample land that is private that has been negotiated for public access by the state wildlife officials. But at the end of the day, it's very critical to determine access ahead of time. And in these hunts, again, we recommend 2+ points before statistically you start becoming eligible for some of the better hunts. All right, and then dead last, we're gonna talk about South Dakota antelope. One thing about South Dakota antelope, these are decent draw odds with relatively few points. And again, you're talking $10 each to build these points. There's some quality bucks being killed. Archery tags are very easily obtained, but again, access is critical, so you'll want to plan before your hunt. But South Dakota is actually a great opportunity for antelope to put in your arsenal to think about if you want to build points cheap and have an opportunity maybe chase a speed goat in South Dakota. So with that said, we really appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. Your subscription helps us a ton if you subscribe to our channel. Also subscribe to notifications. That helps us a ton too, so we can keep bringing this content your direction. Thanks for watching and good luck this fall.